Hey guys, tonight you will hear 20 true stories, each one a slow descent into a moment where history twisted into something strange, dark, and unforgettable. These stories are told in a calm, gentle voice in a quiet, dark room while you lie back, breathe slowly, and listen. Strange, dark, and mysterious, delivered in story form, that is all we do. If you enjoy this kind of story, please hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you are listening from and what time it is. Tonight across the United States, a winter storm is grinding over cities and fields, dropping snow so heavy it buries cars and chokes highways. In over 15 states, warnings call for whiteout skies and drifts climbing toward 20 inches, and people stay inside while the wind claws at their windows. In one quiet room, that howling weather becomes a doorway, and the mind slips backward through the centuries, returning to the year 1000, to a narrow beach on the edge of Vinland, a place we now call Newfoundland, in eastern Canada, where salt ice stings the air and the forest presses close against a handful of Norse longhouses. The cold bites through wool and leather the moment the sun drops behind the pines. Smoke rises thin from turf roofs. Inside the largest hall, men argue in low voices while the wind rattles the door planks. They have been here one full winter already, these explorers from Greenland, sent by Leif Erikson to harvest timber and grapes. Now in the spring of the second year, strangers appear at the forest edge. Every dawn, silent figures wrapped in fur watching. Trade begins. Iron nails for beaver pelts, a red cloth for a kayak frame. Both sides smile with their mouths only. Freydis Eiríksdóttir stands outside the palisade every morning, one hand resting on the curve of her belly. She is 32 years old, 8 months heavy, with her first child daughter of the red-bearded Eric who discovered Greenland. Her brother Leif owns this outpost, but he sailed home months ago. Freydis stayed because she refuses to leave wealth behind. Her husband Thorvard watches her the way men watch storm clouds. She feels the baby kick hard whenever the strangers appear, as if the child already understands danger. The strangers number more than 60 now. They arrive in skin boats, bows across their backs, faces painted black and red. The Norse call them Skraelings. One morning a fight breaks out over a stolen axe. Blood spatters the spring grass. That night the Norsemen sharpen swords by firelight and speak of leaving before summer ends. Freydis listens from the shadows, lips pressed tight. She smells the iron tang on their blades and tastes fear in the back of her throat. She will not run. Dawn comes grey and wet. Drums echo from the tree line, deep and steady like a dying heart. The Skraelings pour onto the beach, hundreds this time, screaming arrows already in the air. Norse shields rise. The first man falls with a shaft through his eye. Then another. The line wavers. Someone shouts the order to fall back to the longhouses. Feet pound. Spears clatter against shields. The retreat turns into a rout. Men drop weapons to run faster across the sand. Freydis steps from the doorway of the largest hall. The baby shifts inside her, heavy and low. Wind whips her hair across her face. She watches the last of her people vanish between the buildings. Arrows hiss past. One thuds into the timber beside her head. The Skraelings are 30 paces away, now wave after wave, mouths open in war cries that shake the ground. She feels the cold sand under her bare feet and the sudden fierce heat of anger in her chest. She bends slow because of the child and lifts a sword from a dead man's hand. The hilt is still warm. Blood drips from the blade onto her wrist. The Skraelings slow, curious. A woman alone, pregnant, unarmed until this moment. Freydis grips the front of her dress with her free hand and rips. Cloth tears loud in the morning air. She pulls the fabric down to her waist, skin white against the dark wool. The cold hits her bare breasts like a slap. She lifts the sword high. Metal catches the weak light. Then she brings the flat of the blade down against her own skin, once, twice hard slaps that echo over the screams. Red welts rise instantly. She opens her mouth and roars, No words, just sound raw and huge, pouring out of her like fire. The baby kicks again, hard enough to make her stagger one step forward. She slaps the sword against her chest a third time and screams until her throat burns. The front line of Skraelings stops dead. Spears lower, eyes widen. Someone in the back shrieks a single word that carries over the wind. They see a giant woman, belly swollen, with new lifeblood on her skin, eyes wild sword flashing. They see a demon mother who cannot be killed because death already grows inside her. The drums falter. One man turns, then 10. Then the whole tide reverses. Feet slip on wet sand as hundreds run back toward their boats. If you stood on that beach right now, you would feel the ground shake with their retreat and hear the sudden, stunned silence left behind. The only sound would be Freydis breathing hard, sword hanging at her side, blood cooling on her chest while the baby settles again. The Norsemen creep out from behind walls, faces pale, unable to meet her eyes. She pulls her torn dress closed and walks past them without a word. The Skraelings never return in force. The outpost lasts one more summer. Freydis gives birth to a son on the voyage home, names him Snorri, the first child of European blood, born on the American continent. Greenland sagas record her deed. In plain words, she shamed the men and saved every life that day. Later chroniclers add that some Skraelings spoke for generations about the screaming spirit woman who drove an army away with nothing but her voice and her bare skin. The strangest detail comes from the Greenlanders' saga itself. When the men later asked why she did it, Freydis answered that any other choice would have killed her child. She did not say she was brave. She said she was angry. The baby inside her felt that anger and kicked in time with her heartbeat while the sword struck her skin. Years later, old men in Iceland still lowered their voices when they spoke her name. They remembered the story not because a woman fought, but because every warrior on that beach ran first, and one pregnant woman refused to take a single step back. The wind off the Atlantic still carries that roar some nights, faint and far across 1,000 years of water. The echo of that lone woman's roar fades across 1,000 years, and the wind keeps moving east, carrying snow now instead of salt, until it reaches a quiet churchyard in Saxony on a Christmas night long ago. Snow falls soft on the frozen ground outside the little wooden church of Kolbik, a village no bigger than a few dozen farms, in the year 1021, in the heart of what is now eastern Germany. Midnight mass has just begun. Inside, candles flicker against stone walls, and the priest lifts the host while voices rise in Latin. Outside, 18 young people link arms in the churchyard. They stamp their feet to stay warm, laugh too loud, and start a circle dance. Their boots thud on packed snow. Breath steams white. Someone begins a drinking song. The rhythm grows faster. Voices carry through the thin door and drown the Latin inside. The priest steps out, face red above his robe. He raises both hands and shouts for silence. The dancers only laugh harder. A girl spins until her braid whips across a boy's cheek. The priest's voice cracks. He curses them. "In the name of God, keep dancing," he says. "Dance until next Christmas if that is what you want so badly." The dancers jeer. Snow muffles everything. The priest goes back inside and slams the door. The song ends. Feet stop. Everyone waits for the next tune. Nothing happens. A boy lifts one foot to step away and finds it will not leave the ground. A girl tries to drop her neighbour's hand. Fingers lock tighter. The circle jerks forward one step, then another against their will. Laughter dies. Eyes widen. Boots scrape and stomp in the same rhythm that moments ago felt like joy. They try to sit. Knees refuse to bend. They try to walk home. The circle drags them sideways. Someone screams. The scream turns into a chant. Then a song they never chose. Arms pump. Heads snap back and forth. Snow flies from their hair. Inside the church, the priest hears the steady thud. Thud, thud against his wall, and thinks they mock him still. He does not open the door again that night. By morning, the whole village watches from windows. The 18 dancers move without pause. Faces drip sweat that freezes on their beards and lashes. Lips crack and bleed. They beg for help between forced verses of the same song. The priest orders them seized. Men rush out with ropes. The moment hands touch the dancers, the rescuers feel their own arms yanked into the circle. They wrench free in terror and back away. Days pass. The dancers' shoes split. Blood leaves red prints in the snow. Villagers carry them food and drink. Cups raised to mouths spill because heads keep jerking. Broth freezes on chins. Someone builds a fire nearby. The heat reaches their skin for a moment, then the circle spins them away again. Their eyes stay open, dry and red. You can hear the crack of joints over the endless stamping. Word travels. By spring, bishops arrive with holy water and crosses. They sprinkle, they pray, they command. Nothing changes. The dancers' hands have grown together, skin fused where fingers overlap. When one stumbles, all 18 crash down, then rise as one pulled upright by the rhythm inside their bones. 4 have already stopped breathing, yet their bodies keep moving, held by the others. Summer comes. Flies settle on open sores. The smell drifts across the village. Children are kept inside. Travellers detour miles to avoid Kolbik. The priest who spoke the curse is taken away in chains by order of the bishop. He weeps the whole journey and will not eat. The dancers keep going thinner, now ribs showing, hair falling out in clumps. Autumn turns cold again. Snow returns. Almost 1 full year since that Christmas night. On the eve of the next Christmas, a new bishop arrives from Magdeburg. He orders the circle brought inside the church itself. Men carry the 14 still alive across the threshold. The moment their broken shoes touch consecrated ground, every body drops at once. Silence fills the church like water rushing into a sinking ship. 14 lie on the stone floor. 10 breathe. 4 do not. The fused hands separate with soft, wet sounds. Skin tears. Blood pools. The survivors sleep for 3 days without moving. When they wake, some can walk again, some cannot. Legs have grown crooked. Arms hang useless. They never speak of joy or dancing again. The chronicles say the priest died in exile before the next winter. If you stand in that churchyard today, the stones are gone. The church rebuilt twice. But old people in the village still point to a patch of ground and say, the rhythm sometimes returns on windy Christmas nights. A faint thud, thud, thud under the snow like boots that never learned how to stop. 18 names are carved on a single stone marker. Young men and women who only wanted one more song before the long Saxon winter closed in. The marker stands quiet now, but the wind still circles it, restless, waiting for the next verse. The thud of those endless boots fades into the German snow, and the wind shifts south, carrying whispers of forbidden palaces where silk curtains hide secrets sharper than any blade. Those whispers reach the heart of Kaifeng, the imperial capital in northern China, during the Song dynasty in the year 1050, a city of 1 million souls, crammed into walls, wide as a river where emperors rule from jade thrones, and every shadow hides a spy. Empress Liu Chengyu paces the inner corridors of the Forbidden City that autumn evening. She is 45 years old, mother to the emperor's only son, and her silk slippers whisper against polished marble. Lanterns swing from red beams, casting her shadow long and thin. She smells the jasmine oil in her hair mixed with the faint copper tang of fear. Her spies report that concubine Li, 23 and radiant, laboured all day in the eastern wing. The air grows heavy with the cries of new life. Midwives bustle in the birthing chamber. Steam rises from copper basins of hot water. Concubine Li grips the bedpost, sweat beading on her forehead, her breath coming in sharp gasps that echo off the painted screens. The emperor waits outside his dragon robe, stiff with gold thread, fingers drumming on his knee. He hears a baby's first wail, strong and clear, and smiles for the first time in months. A son, the heir to the Song throne. Empress Liu slips into the room like smoke. The midwives bow low heads to the floor. She lifts the swaddled bundle herself, feels the tiny chest rise and fall against her palm. The baby's eyes blink open, dark as ink. Liu's nails dig into the silk wrap. She whispers to the head midwife, her voice silk over steel, "Prepare a gift for the new prince." The woman nods, face pale, and hurries out. The chamber falls quiet except for the soft suckling sounds as Li feeds her child. Hours later, in the dead of night, the Empress's private guards seal the eastern wing. No one enters or leaves. The Emperor sleeps under opium haze, in his bedchamber unaware. Liu stands over a small altar, in her rooms burning incense that curls thick and sweet. She unfolds a cloth bundle on the ebony table. A civet cat, no bigger than a house cat, its fur glossy black. The animal twitches, drugged but alive eyes wide with animal panic. The head midwife returns, hands trembling, carrying a basin of steaming water and a curved knife. Liu nods once. The blade flashes. A high keening cry cuts the air, then stops. Blood spatters the tiles, warm and sticky underfoot. The midwife skins the creature with practiced hands, peeling hide from muscle in long, careful strokes. Whiskers quiver on the raw pink flesh. Liu watches her breath steady, the metallic scent filling her nostrils like a promise. Dawn breaks over Kaifeng's tiled roofs. The Emperor summons the court to present the heirs. Concubine Li walks first, cradling her son, his tiny fists waving. Cheers rise from the assembled nobles. Then Empress Liu steps forward, her face serene as a Buddha. She unveils the second prince with a flourish of silk. The bundle squirms. A wet nose pokes out, then ears, then the full-skinned body of the civet cat, glistening under the morning light, whiskers still attached and twitching faintly. Gasps ripple through the hall like wind over rice fields. The Emperor's face drains white. He stumbles back, hand to his mouth, tasting bile. Concubine Li screams a sound that shatters vases on distant shelves. The cat thing writhes in Liu's arms, paws scrabbling against the silk, its tiny heart pounding visible through the thin chest. Guards draw swords halfway, then freeze. The air thickens with horror, every eye fixed on the abomination in the Empress's grasp. If you knelt in that throne room right now, you would feel the marble cold under your knees and smell the sharp urine where the cat soiled the imperial carpet. Nobles whisper of demons, of curses on the dragon line. Liu stands unmeet, her grip iron. She meets the Emperor's eyes and says calm as tea steam, "This is the fruit of Li's womb, proof of her unworthiness." The lie hangs there bold and bare in her heart. Chaos erupts. Eunuchs faint. Ladies cover their faces with fans that tremble. The Emperor roars for Judge Bao Zheng, the iron-faced magistrate, whose name strikes fear even in palace ghosts. Bao arrives at midday, black robes stark against the gold, his bamboo staff tapping steady on the floor. He kneels before the throne, then rises and circles the dead civet, now stiffening on a silver tray. He leans close, inhales once. The whiskers curl in the heat. Bao questions the midwives in a side chamber. Their voices break. One weeps into her sleeves. He finds the discarded skin in a garden, well fur matted with well water. By evening, the truth spills Empress Liu's orders, the knife in the night, the switch made while Li slept exhausted. Bao drags the confessions before the full court scrolls, unrolling like wounds. Liu's face cracks, then lips parting on a silent breath. The Emperor sentences her that night. Stripped of title, confined to a remote pavilion with stone walls and no windows. Guards chain the door. She lives 20 years more, hearing her son's voice fade as he grows to rule without her shadow. Concubine Li's prince becomes Emperor Zhezong, his cradle song. The echo of that scream. The civet cat is burned at dawn. Ashes scattered in the palace lake, but its whiskers wash up on the banks for weeks, tangled in lotus stems. According to the official annals of the Song Court, recorded by historians under Bao's watchful eye, This was no mere jealousy, but a bid to rewrite the bloodline of an empire. Liu confessed in writing she dreamed of her son's face on the throne, and no rival's child would stand in the way. The strangest detail lingers in those scrolls. The cat's eyes stayed open through the skinning, watching the knife descend. Over the next century, similar whispers haunt other dynasties, from Tang poisonings to Ming intrigues, where 8 out of 10 imperial heirs faced plots before their first birthday. Power in those halls did not elevate. It carved away pieces of the soul until only hunger remained. Baozheng Dai's honoured his statue black as justice. But on quiet nights in Kaifeng, old palace maids still swear they hear a faint scratching at locked doors like tiny claws on silk. The palace doors of Kaifeng close forever on that skinned creature, and the wind turns west again, racing across deserts and seas until it reaches an Irish battlefield on Good Friday morning, year 1014. Rain lashes sideways across the hills near Dublin, turning the ground to black mud that sucks at every boot. The air smells of wet iron and torn turf. Brian Boru, 88 years old, and High King of Ireland, kneels in prayer inside a small leather tent while his army fights a mile away at Clontarf. His white beard drips with rain. His joints ache, but he refuses armour. He promised God he would meet this day unarmed if victory came. Outside, the clash of steel and the screams of men roll like thunder. Brodir of Man watches from the Norse lines. He is a giant in mail, black beard braided with silver rings, eyes the colour of winter sea. He once served Brian, then betrayed him for Viking gold. Now he leads a band of Danish berserkers promised land if the old king dies. Brodir's breath steams as he grips his axe. He smells blood on the wind and smiles. The Irish surge forward. Norse shields splinter. Men slip and drown in shallow streams turned red. Brodir sees the royal banner waver and knows Brian's tent stands almost unguarded. He breaks from the fight with 10 chosen men, mail clinking under soaked cloaks. Mud spatters their legs to the knees. They move fast, silent as wolves. Inside the tent, Brian finishes his prayer and stands slowly. His attendant helps him straighten. The old king's hands tremble slightly as he smooths his tunic. He hears the battle noise shift grow closer. He tells the boy beside him to fetch water. The tent flap lifts. Cold air rushes in, carrying the stink of slaughter. Brodir ducks through the opening first. His axe rises, catches the dim light. Brian turns. His eyes meet Brodir's across 3 paces. No time for words. The axe falls. The blade bites deep between neck and shoulder. Blood sprays hot across the tent walls. Brian drops without a sound, knees folding into the mud floor. His white beard soaks crimson instantly. Brodir laughs once short and sharp. He steps over the body, wipes his axe on the king's cloak. His men crowd in behind him, grinning. They do not see the shadow at the tent mouth. Ulf the Quarrelsome. Brian's brother-in-law stands there, sword already drawn. His face is splattered with someone else's blood. He sees Brian on the ground and the world narrows to a single point. Ulf moves faster than men twice his age. His blade catches Brodir across the back of the legs. Mail rings split. Brodir roars and spins, but Ulf is inside the axe swing now. Sword thrusts up under the ribs. Brodir staggers. His men lunge. Steel clashes in the small space. 2 fall dead. The rest flee into the rain. Brodir drops to his knees in the mud outside the tent. Blood pours from his side, steaming in the cold. Ulf grabs him by the beard and drags him toward a lone ash tree on the hillside. Brodir's boots carve twin trenches. He curses in Norse voice, thick and wet. Ulf says nothing. He ties Brodir's wrists with the dead king's own belt. A young Irish warrior brings rope. Ulf loops it around Brodir's waist, then lower around the belly. Brodir realises and begins to scream. Ulf draws his dagger and cuts a slit just above the belt. The scream rises higher. Ulf reaches in with both hands. Warm intestines spill over his wrists like wet rope. The smell hits sharp butcher shop stink, mixed with rain. Ulf knots the end of the gut around the ash trunk. He steps back. Brodir stares down at the pale rope of himself, glistening, still moving slightly. Ulf kicks him once in the back. Brodir stumbles forward. The gut pulls taut. He takes another step. More slides out with a soft sucking sound. His scream turns to a gurgle. If you stood under that tree right now, you would hear the rain hiss on hot entrails and feel the ground tremble with each forced step. Brodir walks in a slow circle 20 paces around the trunk. Each loop pulls another arm's length free. His mail drags lower. His face goes grey. The rope of gut grows longer, steaming, coiling like a pale snake in the mud. On the 7th circle, his knees buckle. He keeps crawling. Eyes bulge. Fingers claw at the bark. The ash tree creaks but holds. On the 9th circle, the last length spills out with a wet slap. Brodir collapses face down across his own intestines. His final breath bubbles red. The rain keeps falling, washing pink rivers downhill toward the sea. Ulf wipes his hands on grass and walks away without looking back. The battle ends by dusk. Brian's body is carried home on a shield. Brodir's corpse hangs 3 days from the tree gutted and open for ravens. Irish chroniclers write that his entrails measured 35 feet when they finally cut him down. According to the Annals of Innisfallen, kept by monks who saw the aftermath, this was lawful vengeance under old Brecon custom. Blood for blood, shame for shame. Similar guttings appear in half a dozen later sagas, but none so long, none so deliberate. On windy nights near Clontarf, fishermen still refuse to beach their boats under certain ash trees, saying the ground there stays warmer than it should, and sometimes a faint dragging sound moves in circles when no one walks. The rain over Clontarf dries into centuries, and the wind swings east again far beyond Ireland, until it reaches the jagged peaks of Mount O in central Japan during the Heian period around the year 1000. Pine needles hiss in the storm, and the air smells of wet stone and distant blood. Travellers vanish on the road between Kyoto and the northern provinces. One night a merchant leaves the capital with 10 guards. By dawn only the merchant's horse returns, saddle empty, reins dragging. Word spreads something lives in the mountains that eats men and keeps women. The emperor's court whispers the name Shuten Doji, the drunken demon, a bandit chief, taller than any warrior with red skin and horns curling from his skull. Minamoto no Raiko, 39 years old, and captain of the Imperial Guard, hears the stories while sharpening his sword by lantern light. He feels the cold steel under his thumb and tastes iron in the air. 4 of his best men sit with him: Watanabe, no Tsunasakata, no Kintoki, and 2 others. They drink sake in silence. Raiko sets his cup down and says they will climb the mountain and end it. They dress as wandering priests, grey robes over hidden armour. Bells on their staffs jingle softly as they walk the narrow path. Rain turns to sleet. Pines close overhead like a roof. On the 7th night they smell smoke. A fortress of logs and skulls blocks the pass. Human heads grin from spikes. The gate stands open. Laughter rolls out deep and drunken. Inside the great hall, Shuten Doji sprawls on a dais of tiger skins. He is 9 feet tall, skin the colour of fresh blood eyes glowing like coals. Captive women serve sake in bowls made from skulls. The demon's voice booms thick with drink. He lifts a cup the size of a helmet and toasts his guests, the disguised warriors. Raiko bows low, offers a gift jar sealed with red wax. The demon grins, tusks gleaming. Steve. They drink together for 3 nights. The sake from Raiko's jar never runs dry. Shuten Doji grows louder, slurring old songs about eating livers and drinking blood. His bandits slump, one by one, snoring against the walls. On the 3rd night, the demon staggers to his sleeping chamber, horns scraping the ceiling beams. The women are led away, wrists raw from chains. Raiko waits until the fortress falls quiet. Moonlight cuts through the smoke hole. He nods once. the 5 warriors draw swords hidden inside their staffs. Their footsteps make no sound on the blood-stained floorboards. They slide the chamber door open. Shuten Doji lies on his back chest, rising slow. Sake breath, heavy in the air. Raiko raises his blade. Hizamaru forged by the gods themselves. The steel catches moonlight and throws it back red. He brings the sword down across the demon's thick neck. The cut is clean. Blood fountains black steaming on the tatami. The head rolls free, eyes still open, mouth working. It bites the floor once teeth cracking wood. The body jerks upright, headless arms reaching. Kintoki swings his massive axe and severs both wrists. The torso falls back, pumping blood in rhythmic spurts. The head keeps talking, voice bubbling through the stump. It curses Raiko by every god in Japan. The warriors wrap the head in cloth. It still snaps at their fingers through the layers. They free the women, over 100, some missing fingers, some with child. Dawn stains the mountain pink as the war band marches down the path. Behind them, the fortress burns flames, roaring up into the wet sky. Shuten Doji's head is carried in a lacquered box to the emperor in Kyoto. When the lid is opened, the mouth still moves, promising revenge. If you stood on Mount O today, you would smell pine and cold stone, but on certain foggy nights, old hunters say sake fumes drift from cracks in the rock, and a deep voice laughs far below the ground. The Nihon Ryoiki and later chronicles record the raid exactly as Raiko reported it. 1 demon, 1 night, 5 swords and a head that would not die until buried under a temple bell in Kyoto. The strangest detail comes from the women who survived. They said Shuten Doji never ate in front of them. He only drank cup after cup until his red skin flushed darker. Some swore he was once human, a noble exiled for crimes too dark to name, who made a bargain with mountain spirits and woke up changed. His final moment, they said, was not the sword fall. It was the moment the sake in his veins turned to poison, and he knew too late that the priests had outdrunk the drunken demon himself. The head kept cursing all the way down the mountain, voice growing fainter until the temple bell rang once and everything went quiet forever. The smoke from Mount O drifts north and thins into the same wind that once rattled parchment across England in the year 1086. In every shire, royal clerks on horseback ride from village to village with wax-sealed scrolls. They ask the same questions. How many ploughs? How many pigs? How many sons? How much is every acre worth? The answers are scratched into a great book bound in calfskin. The king calls it his Domesday Book. The people call it something else. In a hamlet outside Winchester, an old woman watches the clerk count her 3 cows. She crosses herself twice and spits on the ground when he turns away. Her hands shake as she grips the fence rail. She smells the wet wool of the clerk's cloak and the sour ink on his fingers. She has heard the talk, this is no census. This is the ledger of the Last Judgment written early by Norman hands. When the book is finished, the world ends. Word spreads faster than horses. In Essex, a priest reads the Latin aloud to his flock and tells them the Latin word domus means house of God and dei means day of God. The name is a sign. Christ returns the moment the final page is filled. In Yorkshire, men burn their harvest rather than declare it. In Kent, 3 families hang themselves from the same oak before the clerk arrives. Their feet still swing when he writes the entry 3 fewer souls. William the Conqueror sits in Gloucester at Christmas listening to reports. He is 59, face scarred from the Hastings fight 20 years earlier. His left hand drums on the table. He smells wood smoke and roasted boar, but the taste in his mouth is ash. His clerks promise the book will be done by summer. He nods and says nothing about the suicides. Land must be measured. Taxes must be set. By spring, the panic swells like floodwater. In Somerset, a monk named Eadmer sees the clerks coming and runs into the fens. He wades chest deep through reeds, water cold enough to steal his breath. Behind him, the village burns its own church to hide the silver. In Norfolk, a girl of 12 climbs the bell tower and throws herself down rather than have her father's name written beside the word service slave. Her body lands with a sound the village remembers for generations. If you walked an English road that April, you would hear church bells ringing backward and see crosses painted black on doors. You would smell fear sharper than smoke. Mothers hide children in haylofts. Men sharpen scythes and whisper about killing the clerks. Some do. In a village near Oxford, 2 Norman surveyors are found with their throats cut and their parchments soaked red. The killers vanish into the forest before sunrise. William sends soldiers. Villages that resist are razed. The book keeps growing. 2 volumes, 483 pages, every hide of land, every mill, every pigsty listed in cramped Latin. By August, the last entry is written. The world does not end. The sun rises the next day exactly as always. People creep out of hiding, blinking ashamed and angry at the same time. The Domesday Book is locked in Winchester Treasury. Clerks copy it twice so nothing is ever lost. It survives fire war and 9 centuries. Today you can touch the actual pages in London and feel the faint ridges where the quill pressed too hard. The panic is barely mentioned in the margins. One line about certain persons who fled into woods, another about villages laid waste by their own fear. Yet in the West Country they still say that on windy August nights the clerks ride again, ghostly horses splashing through empty lanes asking the same questions in voices like dry leaves. Old farmers swear they wake to find fresh ink on their doorposts, a single Latin word census, written by no living hand. The strangest detail comes from the book itself. In hundreds of entries beside the neat lists of ploughs and meadows a later scribe added tiny marks, crosses, almost invisible. Monks who studied the volume in the 13th century believed those marks counted the souls who killed themselves rather than be written down. No one knows how many crosses there are. No one has ever finished counting. The wind still turns those pages sometimes late at night when the reading room is empty and the guards are far away. The ink of that fearful ledger dries, and the same restless wind crosses deserts and mountains until it reaches a quiet lake in central China, one autumn night in the year 1088. The water lies flat as black glass under a thin moon. Reeds whisper along the shore. A single lantern glows on the porch of a small pavilion where Shen Kuo sits alone, 67 years old, sleeves rolled to the elbow, inkstone open beside him. Xing is the empire's greatest scholar builder, of clocks and canals, mapper of stars. Tonight he watches the sky for comets. His breath fogs in the cooling air. He smells wet earth and the faint smoke of his own lamp. The lake reflects 1,000 stars, perfect and still. Then one star moves. It drifts lower, grows brighter, until it hangs just above the water like a second moon. The light shifts from white to gold to a soft pearl colour. Shen leans forward. His chair creaks. The object is the size of a large ship, shaped like an enormous pearl split open along one side. A wide door stands open in the shell. Light pours out bright enough to hurt the eyes, yet gentle like dawn inside a cloud. He feels warmth on his face even from 50 paces away. Inside the opening shapes move tall, thin, not quite human. Shen cannot see faces, only silhouettes against the glow. The air fills with a low humming, steady as a beehive, but deeper felt in the chest more than heard. The lake surface ripples, though no wind blows. Fish float belly up along the edges, stunned or cooked, he cannot tell. Shen's brush trembles above the page. Ink drips black on white silk. He writes anyway, characters small and careful. A pearl of great size. Doors and windows within. Light issuing forth like sunrise. His hand steadies as wonder overtakes fear. The humming grows louder. The pearl lifts a handspan, then another. Water streams from its underside in silver threads. If you sat beside Shen that moment, you would feel your hair lift slightly and taste metal on your tongue, the way the air tastes before lightning. The object rises until it hangs level with the treetops. The door stays open the whole time, light spilling across the lake like molten gold. Shen stands now, one hand gripping the porch rail, knuckles white. The pearl tilts once slowly as if turning to look straight at him. For 3 breaths the world holds still. Then the door closes with no sound at all. The light vanishes so completely that the stars seem dimmer afterward. The pearl shoots upward faster than any arrow, shrinking to a spark, then to nothing. The lake falls dark. Crickets start again, louder than before. Shen sits back down. His lamp has gone out while he watched. He relights it with shaking fingers. The fish along the shore begin to sink. The smell of warm mud returns. He writes for another hour, describing every detail. Size, colour, changes, the warmth, the silence of the closing door. He signs the page and dates it the 5th year of Yuan Feng, 10th month, 25th day. He never tells the emperor. He buries the accounts inside a longer book of notes called Dream Pool Essays, slipped between star charts and recipes for better ink. 900 years later, scholars find the passage and argue for decades. Was it a ship from the sky, a trick of swamp gas, a dream of an old man too long awake? Shen never says. He dies 4 years later, quietly still watching the heavens. Today the lake is called Taihu, vast and busy with fishing boats. On foggy autumn nights, the water sometimes glows faintly under the surface, a soft pearl light that lasts only moments. Fishermen cut their engines and wait. They say if you are very still, you can hear the low humming again and feel warmth on your face though the air is cold. Shen's exact words survive in his own handwriting. It came close enough that I saw the structure inside like chambers in a palace. Yet it made no noise of oars or sails. That single page, folded small, travelled through fire and flood and war until it rested in Beijing. Sometimes when the reading room is empty, the paper itself seems warmer than the air around it, as if something once touched it that has never quite let go. The glow over Taihu fades into the night sky, and the wind turns west once more, carrying a colder edge, now across mountains and plains until it reaches the city of Constantinople in the year 1072. Inside the palace of Blackernay, a man lies on a straw mattress in a locked chamber. The air smells of pus and old blood. Flies buzz against the shutters. Romanos Diogenes is 52 years old, once emperor of Byzantium, now blind and broken. 8 months ago, after losing the Battle of Manzikert, he was captured by the Seljuk Sultan. They promised him freedom if he paid ransom. He paid. They sent him home anyway, but not whole. On the road, his own rivals intercepted the escort. They held him down on a wooden bench while a soldier pressed a red-hot iron bowl against each eye. The hiss lasted longer than the scream. Now he lies alone. Servants bring thin soup he cannot see. He smells it cooling beside the bed and turns his face away. His beard has grown wild, matted with dried tears and worse. The sockets are crusted black. Every breath brings a sweet rot stink of infection. When he moves, the linen sticks to the wounds and tears free with a soft rip. His wife, Empress Eudokia, never visits. She married his rival while Romanos was still in chains. Yet every week a letter arrives carried by a silent eunuch. The seal is her ring, the one he gave her on their wedding night. The eunuch reads it aloud in a flat voice. The Lord sees all. Nothing more. Romanos listens, fingers clutching the blanket, and feels the words settle like stones in his gut. The pain changes day by day. First fire, then ice, then a deep throbbing that matches his pulse. At night the room fills with phantom light. Green and gold swirls behind the ruined eyes. He dreams he is still on the throne, hearing courtiers laugh. He wakes tasting blood where he has bitten his tongue raw. One morning the pain shifts lower into the bones of his face. The skin over his cheek splits open. Yellow fluid drips onto the pillow. Flies settle in the cracks. He feels them walking tiny feet soft as feathers. He no longer has strength to wave them away. The servants stop coming as often. The soup stays untouched until it moulds. If you stood in that chamber now, you would hear the wet sound of his breathing and smell the thick sweetness of flesh turning bad while the man still lives. You would see maggots working along the edges of the sockets, pale against the black crust. Romanos no longer speaks. When the eunuch comes again, the letter is the same. The Lord sees all. The voice reads it twice, then leaves. On the 9th day of the 9th month, the pain stops. Romanos feels a strange lightness, as if the bed has fallen away. He hears his own heart slow one beat. Pause, another. His final thought is simple. He sees nothing yet. Someone is watching. His final sound is a small exhale, almost a sigh, that stirs the flies into a brief cloud. They find him at dawn. The body is already cool. Maggots have reached the lips. The face is unrecognisable, eaten half away. The patriarch refuses burial in consecrated ground, an emperor who lost to infidels, blinded by his own people, dead in disgrace. They wrap him in a coarse cloak and carry him out through a side gate before the city wakes. Chroniclers write that the stench followed the funeral cart for 3 streets. Dogs trailed behind until soldiers drove them off with stones. They bury him outside the walls, in unmarked earth. Within a year, grass covers the spot. Within 10, no one remembers exactly where. Yet in Constantinople's archives, the official record ends with a single line, added by a later hand. Thus died Romanos, who once ruled the world, because the Lord indeed saw all. On certain winter nights when the wind moves down from the Blackernae, hill palace guards still cross themselves quickly and walk faster past the old locked chamber. They say the smell returns, for a moment sweet sick impossible, and somewhere inside a blind man waits for another letter that will never come. The stink of that ruined palace drifts north on a colder wind across the Black Sea, over frozen rivers, until it settles in the Icelandic wilderness in the late 1000s. Snow falls thick and silent. A man moves alone between black cliffs, breath-steaming white boots crunching on ice that never quite thaws even in summer. Gisli Surson is 42 years old, outlawed for 13 years, now accused of a killing he did not do and another he did. His beard is long and frosted. His mail shirt has rusted into the wool beneath. He smells smoke on the wind and knows someone is close. He has smelled it every week for 13 years and always slipped away before steel found him. He lives in caves and earth houses dug under lava fields. Tonight he crouches in one near Geirþjófsfjord, a narrow shelf of rock above a roaring stream. The air inside is damp and close. He lights no fire. He chews dried fish that tastes of salt and despair. His sword lies across his knees, the edge nicked from too many fights in the dark. Sleep comes in pieces. When it comes, 2 women stand at the foot of his dreams. One wears white linen hair bright as summer grass. She smiles and pours warm milk into a silver cup. The other is cloaked in black face, hidden hands red to the elbow. She drips blood onto the snow and whispers numbers. Tonight she says 7 nights remain. Gisli wakes sweating though the cave is below freezing. He has seen them since the blood feud began. The good dream woman brings rest and small luck. A loose rock that hides his track, a raven that warns of hunters. The bad one brings the count. She began at 480 nights. Now she is almost finished. Gisli sharpens his sword by feel ease and waits for morning. Outside, 15 men move through the blizzard. Eyjolf the Foul leads them bounty on his belt, 30 marks of silver for Gisli's head. Their torches hiss in the snow. Boots leave deep prints that fill almost as fast as they are made. They have tracked him for 3 days, following smoke that rose only once when he thought himself safe. Gisli hears the crunch of steps on the ridge above. He pulls his cloak tight and slips out the back of the cave, a tunnel no wider than a fox's run. Ice scrapes his shoulders. He crawls 20 body lengths and emerges under an overhang. Snow lashes his face. He tastes blood where a rock split his lip. The hunters split into 3s. One group circles left, one right, one comes straight. Gisli runs. The slope is sheer glazed with ice. His feet slide. He drops his spear to keep balance and hears it clatter far below. Behind him a shout rises, they have found the cave empty. Torches flare brighter as men spread out. He reaches a narrow ledge above the fjord. Water roars black beneath. No way down, no way forward. The first hunter appears 20 paces away, axe raised. Gisli turns at bay. His back is to the drop. Wind screams between the cliffs. Snow blinds everything beyond arm's length. They come slowly now, sure of the kill. Eyjolf steps forward, sword drawn. Gisli lifts his own blade. The steel feels heavier than ever. He thinks of his wife awed, warm in a hall he will never see again. He thinks of the white woman and the red woman waiting beyond the fight. His breath steadies. The attack comes all at once. Steel rings, sparks fly in the dark. Gisli fights like a man borrowing time. He takes a cut across the ribs, warm blood soaking wool. He gives one back, hears a scream. Another blade finds his thigh. He staggers. The ledge crumbles under his heel. If you stood on that cliff tonight, you would hear only the wind and the clash of iron, then suddenly nothing. Gisli's final moment is simple. He sees the bad dream woman standing behind Eyjolf, smiling at last, her count complete. He lowers his sword. The next thrust takes him through the chest. He steps backward into air. He falls 50 feet. The fjord takes him without sound. Blood spreads pink on black water, then vanishes. The hunters peer over the edge, torches flickering. They see nothing but snow filling the footprints on the ledge. By morning the body is gone, carried out to sea. The saga of Gisli ends with his brother-in-law Thorkel saying he heard the wind cry out that night like a man in pain, then fall silent forever. Hunters searched for weeks and found only the sword, washed up miles away, edge still bright. They broke it across a rock and left the pieces for the tide. In the years after, farmers near Gerithjofsfjord refused to graze sheep on that cliff. They said on certain winter nights, 2 women walk there, one in white, one in black, and a third figure limps between them trying to speak, though his mouth fills with snow. The count is over. The outlaw is home. The snow over Gisli's empty cliff melts into centuries, and the wind drops south past burning villages and starving borders until it reaches the dusty roads of northern China in the early 1200s during the Jin Song Wars. Smoke hangs low. Fields lie black. Refugees stream south with whatever they can carry. In the chaos, certain inns along the old highways begin to serve a new kind of dumpling. Travellers stop at a small place called the Good Rest, 30 li north of Kaifeng. The signboard creaks in the wind. Inside, the innkeeper bows low, a thin woman with quick hands. She smells of pork fat and ginger. Her dumplings are famous thin dough-rich filling broth that bursts hot on the tongue. A single bowl costs 1 copper coin. Men eat 3-4, wipe their mouths and sleep heavy in the back room. The back room has no windows. Mats line the floor. A single lamp burns low. Guests lie down, smiling bellies full, and never wake. By morning, the innkeeper's husband drags the bodies out through a side gate. He works fast with a cleaver and a wooden tub. Bones go into the lime pit behind the stable. Meat is minced fine, mixed with scallion and pepper folded into fresh dough. The next travellers smell only savoury steam. One spring evening, a monk in patched robes stops for the night. He is 60, beard grey staff, worn smooth. He eats slowly, chewing each dumpling 32 times the way his master taught him. He tastes something wrong beneath the ginger, a faint iron note like blood left too long in the bowl. He sets his chopsticks down and watches the innkeeper's eyes flick to the back room. The monk excuses himself, saying he must relieve himself. He walks behind the kitchen instead. Moonlight falls through a crack in the wall. He sees the tub, the cleaver, the pale heap waiting for morning. Flies rise in a black cloud. The monk's stomach turns, but his feet stay quiet. He slips back inside, pays with a smile and lies down among the snoring guests. At the third watch, when the lamp gutters low, the innkeeper's husband moves between the mats with a short blade. He starts at the far end. One guest sighs as the knife slides in. Another never moves. The monk waits until the man stands over him, breath sour with wine. Then the monk's staff whips up, cracks the killer's wrist. The blade clatters. The monk is already on his feet. The fight is short and ugly. The husband is strong but slow. The wife rushes in with a meat cleaver. The monk breaks her knee with one swing. She screams once before the staff silences her. The remaining guests wake to blood on their faces and the smell of opened bellies. 2 try to run and are caught by neighbours who heard the noise. By dawn, the county magistrate arrives with soldiers. They dig the lime pit. Bones come up in baskets, men, women, a child no older than 10. 63 skulls in all, though some are only fragments. The innkeeper confesses between sobs. War made rice dear, she says. Travellers carried silver. 1 killing became 2, then 20, then too many to count. The dumplings paid for grain. The circle closed. The magistrate orders the couple sewn into pigskins and thrown to the dogs in the marketplace. The dogs tear slowly. The crowd watches in silence. Later the inn is burned. The road stays empty for years. Travellers walk wide around the ashes even when grass finally grows back. In the official records of the Song dynasty, the case is listed simply. Black Inn north of the Yellow River, proprietors, executed victims 63. Similar notes appear in 3 other provinces during the same decade. Hunger and war turned ordinary people into butchers, and the road itself became the hunting ground. If you ride that stretch today, the highway is smooth and busy, but truck drivers still refuse to stop after dark. They say on foggy nights the smell of ginger and pork fat drifts across the lanes, and sometimes a woman's voice calls from the roadside, soft and quick, offering dumplings no one is foolish enough to taste. The wind carries it away before anyone can answer. The smoke from that burning inn thins and drifts south, curling around the magistrate courts of Kaifeng in the year 1062. Inside the Great Hall of Justice, torches hiss in iron brackets. A man kneels on the cold stone floor, wrists bound behind him, silk robes torn at the shoulders. His name is Bao Mian, 35 years old, nephew of the chief judge himself. Bao Zheng stands above him, 63 face dark as forged iron eyes unblinking. The hall is silent except for the soft scrape of the executioner's sword on whetstone. Bao Zheng's voice cuts clean through the air, guilty of taking bribes, guilty of selling justice, guilty of letting a murderer walk free for 10 pieces of gold. The nephew lowers his head until his forehead touches the floor. No one moves. Bao Zheng lifts the vermilion brush, writes the single character for death on the scroll, then stamps it with the imperial seal. He does not look at his nephew again. The executioner steps forward. The sword rises, catches torchlight, falls. One clean sound like chopping bamboo. Blood spreads warm across the stones. The head rolls once and stops facing its own body. The hall empties slowly. Ministers file out robes, whispering. Bao Zheng stays until the servants mop the floor with straw and lime. He smells the sharp bite of blood mixed with incense. His hands do not shake. He has done this before to dukes, to princes, to men who once shared his table. Today it was family. Outside the city already knows. Crowds gather at the eastern gate where the body will hang 3 days. People bring children to see it. They say the iron-faced judge fears neither heaven nor earth, only the law. Mothers point to the headless corpse and tell sons this is what happens when you sell what is not yours to sell. That night, Bao Zheng walks home alone through narrow streets. Lanterns swing red overhead. He hears his own footsteps echo. A drunk stumbles from an alley, sees the black robe and moon-shaped crest on the judge's hat, and falls to his knees, babbling. Thanks for past justice. Bao Zheng steps around him without a word. In his study, he lights 1 candle. He opens the ledger of cases and writes the day's judgment in careful strokes. Then he adds a smaller note beneath private for his own eyes only. Today I cut away a branch of my own tree. May it be the last. Ink dries black on the page. He dies 7 months later, quietly sitting at that same desk. Servants find him at dawn, head resting on folded arms, candle burned to a stub. The city mourns for 30 days. Temples fill with incense. Common people leave rice and wine at roadside shrines they build overnight. Within a generation, stories grow. They say Bao Zheng's face turned black because he once entered hell to argue a case and the demons marked him, so mortals would know death had no power over him. They say when corrupt officials hear his name, their gold turns cold in their hands. If you visit Kaifeng today, his temple still stands by the lake. The statue inside has a face of polished iron, eyes wide mouth set hard. Old women burn paper money and whisper that, on nights when lightning forks across the sky, the statue's sword drips fresh blood for a moment, then dries clean again before anyone can swear they saw it. The official song history records one line about the execution. In the second year of Jiayu, Judge Bao executed his own nephew and did not spare him. Nothing more. But the people remember the sound of that single sword stroke, clean and final, echoing down 900 years of courtrooms, whenever someone in power thinks family blood runs thicker than justice. The echo of that sword stroke fades from Kaifeng and rides west on a dry burning wind across deserts and ruined cities until it reaches the dusty streets of Damascus in the year 1031. Inside a small house near the Great Mosque, a blind poet sits on a worn carpet, fingers moving over lines of raised script. His name is Abu al-Ala al-Ma'ari, 60 years old, beard white as salt. Al-Ma'ari has not tasted meat in 40 years. He eats only lentils bread and water carried from the well before dawn. He wears the same patched cloak, winter and summer. When visitors come, he offers them nothing but words. His voice is soft, almost kind, yet every sentence cuts like a new blade. He writes verses that make mullahs sweat. He says the Kaaba is only stone that pilgrimage, is theatre that priests of every faith sell fear, the way butchers sell lamb. He refuses to father children. When asked why, he answers, "I will not sentence a soul to this prison of flesh. The world is a slaughterhouse," he says, "and birth is the gate." Tonight he sits alone. The air smells of dust and distant rain that will never arrive. His fingers pause on the page. He feels the raised dots that spell out his latest line. We laugh, but the joke is on us. We weep, but the tears are borrowed. He smiles without warmth. Outside the city, dogs begin to bark at nothing. In the morning, a crowd gathers at his door. Young men from the madrasa shout that he is a heretic, that his tongue should be cut out. Al-Ma'ari hears them through the thin wall and keeps writing. He adds one more couplet. They threaten me with hellfire, yet I have lived in hell since the day I first drew breath. The governor sends guards to quiet the mob. They stand with spears crossed and tell the poet to leave the city for his own safety. He refuses. I was born here, he says. I will die here. My grave is already dug in my mother's garden. Let the stones come if they must. They do not stone him. Instead, they spread stories that he eats dirt, that he speaks to demons, that his blindness is punishment for mocking God. He hears every rumour and laughs the same dry laugh. He writes a poem called The Epistle of Forgiveness, in which he imagines heaven filled with the very pagans and sinners the mullahs condemned drinking wine and laughing at the pious left outside the gate, the Hund. Years pass. His body shrinks to bone and parchment. On the morning he dies, he asks for water. The servant brings a clay cup. Al-Ma'ari lifts it with both trembling hands, drinks once, sets it down half full. He says, "This is how every life ends half finished." Then he lies back on the same carpet and stops breathing. They bury him in his mother's garden as he asked. No priest prays over the grave. His students carve one line on the stone. This crime was by my father upon me, and I committed none against my son. People read it and walk away unsettled. If you visit Ma'ara today, the tomb still stands under a fig tree. Children play around it. Old men sit in its shade and argue about what he really meant. On windy nights, the pages of his books, copied 1,000 times, seem to turn by themselves in locked libraries. Scholars swear they hear a soft voice correcting their translations, patience amused merciless. 9 centuries later, his verses still circulate in secret among those who doubt. In a world that still kills for blasphemy, Al-Ma'ari remains the quiet blind man who looked straight into every heaven and hell men invented, and said none of it is worth the suffering of a single child. The wind carries that sentence farther than any empire ever reached. The soft laughter of the blind poet drifts north on a hot wind across mountains and plains until it reaches a wooden palace in Krakow, Poland, in the spring of 1031. Inside the great hall, torches smoke and servants whisper. The king is carried in on a litter face, grey hands pressed between his thighs. Mieszko Dui is 35 years old, once tall and strong, now curled like a child. His beard is matted with sweat. He smells blood and old urine on the furs beneath him. 2 weeks ago he rode north to fight rebels on the Baltic coast. He returned a lone cloak wrapped tight around his waist, refusing to let anyone help him dismount. The story leaks out in pieces. Bohemian raiders caught him in an ambush near the Oder River. They knew who he was, Crown Prince of Poland, son of the great Bolesław. They dragged him from the saddle, tore his mail shirt open, forced him face down across a fallen log. The leader took a stone club, studded with iron nails, and brought it down once, twice, 3 times between Mieszko's legs. The sound was wet and final. They left him alive. That was the point. They wanted Poland to see what happened when it grew too proud. They tied him to his own horse and slapped it south. The horse walked 3 days with its rider slumped forward, blood dripping steady from the saddle. Now he lies in the palace while physicians hover with bowls of warm milk and poppy. They dare not touch the wound. The flesh is black and swollen to twice its size, split open like rotten fruit. Pus runs yellow and thick. When the king moves, fresh blood follows. He bites a leather strap whenever the pain crests. His wife Richeza sits beside the bed, face-white hands folded so tight the knuckles crack. She smells the wound across the room, sweet-sick, unstoppable. Mieszko will not look at her. He stares at the rafters and speaks only once, "I should have died there." Then silence again. The court pretends nothing has changed. Messengers still bring wax tablets for the royal seal. Mieszko lifts the stylus with shaking fingers and signs what they place in front of him. Ink sometimes smears where tears fall. No one mentions the smell that now fills the entire wing. If you stood outside the door that summer, you would hear the low moan that never quite stops day or night. Servants carry out basins of dark fluid and will not meet each other's eyes. Flies find the chamber no matter how many screens they hang. By autumn, the swelling has spread to his belly. The skin shines tight. Veins stand purple beneath. One morning he calls the bishop. The priest leans close. Mieszko whispers something too soft to hear, then turns his face to the wall. An hour later, the moaning stops. The room falls quieter than anyone can remember. They wash the body with wine and wrap it in purple silk. The undertakers work fast, faces wrapped in cloth against the stench. The casket is closed before the court assembles. No one sees what the stone club left behind. The bishop says only that the king died of fever after battle wounds. He is buried in Poznan Cathedral beside his father. The stone lid shows him whole sword in hand, legs straight, face calm. Within a year the kingdom fractures. His sons are too young, his brothers too eager. Poland splits and bleeds for decades. Chroniclers write around the truth. The Gallus Anonymous calls it a grievous wound received in war. Later Polish kings never speak the details aloud. Yet in the cathedral crypt on the coldest February nights, the guards still hear a faint sound from beneath the stone, like a man shifting on a litter, trying to find a position that does not hurt. 900 years later, the casket remains sealed. Historians argue about disease, about poison, about everything except the simple, brutal fact carved into the silence. A king was unmade between his legs and carried home alive. So every day afterward would remind him exactly who held power now. The wind down there is always warm, and it never quite stops moving. The warm crypt air of Poznan rises and turns southeast, crossing centuries, until it settles over the dry hills of Yazd, in Persia sometime in the late 1100s. Night presses hot against the mud brick houses. A woman walks alone through the narrow alleys, veil drawn tight, bare feet silent on the packed earth. Her name is lost to time, but the city remembers her as Bibi the Weaver. Bibi is 30, widowed, twice, no children. She earns silver by dyeing silk the colour of pomegranates. Men say the dye never fades because she mixes it with blood drawn from her own arm on moonless nights. They say more, that she can knot a thread around a man's heart from 20 leagues away, that she sends dreams of scorpions into the beds of generals, that when she laughs 3 times in one night, someone wakes with bleeding eyes. Tonight she carries a small clay bowl covered with black cloth. Inside lies a single lock of hair, black coarse, taken from the beard of a Seljuk commander who taxed the city until the wells ran dry. She stops beneath the governor's tower. The guards on the wall are asleep, heads drooping in the heat. She lifts the bowl, whispers 7 words older than Islam, and pours a thin stream of oil across the threshold stone. 3 nights later, the commander wakes screaming. Scorpions, hundreds of them, pour from his mouth, black and shining. Servants beat them with sandals until the floor is slick. The man thrashes ribs, cracking under his own weight. By dawn he is dead, mouth still open, tongue swollen purple. The scorpions vanish as suddenly as they came. No one finds a single corpse. The governor orders every wise woman seized. Soldiers drag Bibi from her house at midday. Her loom is smashed, dyes poured into the dust. They bind her wrists with ropes soaked in salt. The chief mullah reads the charge, seer, black magic commerce with demons, murder by sorcery. The crowd outside the mosque grows thick and angry. They take her to the pit beyond the city walls, a dry well once used for stoning. Men line the edge, stones ready. Bibi stands at the bottom, veil gone, hair loose like dark water. The sun burns white above. The first rock strikes her shoulder. Bone snaps. She does not cry out. The second splits her brow. Blood runs into her eyes, warm and sticky. If you stood at the rim that afternoon, you would hear only the thud of stone on flesh and the low growl of the crowd. You would smell dust and old blood baked into the walls. Bibi raises her face, once eyes clear through the red, and speaks a single sentence no one writes down. Some later swear she smiled. The stones fall faster. Her knees buckle. The last thing she feels is the cool shade of a rock before it crushes her throat. The last thing she hears is her own breath stops sudden as a door closing. The crowd keeps throwing until the pit is silent and half full. They leave her there. No burial, no prayer. Jackals come at night and drag pieces away. Within a month, the governor's favourite son drowns in a cistern 3 feet deep. Within a year, the city's wells begin to fail. People say on windless evenings, a woman's laugh 3 short notes drifts from the abandoned pit, and every man who hears it wakes the next morning with a knot of black thread under his pillow. In the Persian chronicles, the case is recorded once briefly. A sorceress of Yazd was justly stoned for causing death by magic. Nothing more, yet caravan drivers still refuse to water their camels near that pit. They say the stones themselves are warm long after sunset, and sometimes when the moon is dark, fresh pomegranate dye seeps between the cracks, bright as new blood, heading nowhere and coming from no one. The dust of Yazd settles, and the wind turns west again. Cool and damp now, until it reaches a quiet village in the heart of England during the reign of King Stephen, sometime between 1051 and 1054. Woolpit lies low between fields of barley. Its church bell cracked its people small and suspicious of strangers. On a blazing August afternoon, 2 children climb out of one of the wolf pits that give the village its name. The boy stumbles first, then the girl who holds his hand. Their skin is green, the colour of new leaves after rain. Their clothes are cut from cloth no one recognises, soft and shimmering like pond water. They blink against the sun and speak words that sound like birds fighting in a hollow log. The reaper who finds them drops his scythe. He smells wet earth on the children, strong as if they just stepped out of a cave. Their eyes are wide pupils, huge and black. The girl is taller, Perhaps 12 years old, the boy no more than 8. When the reaper reaches out, they shrink back, pressing together like foals. Villagers gather. Someone brings bread. The children sniff it and turn away, faces twisting. They eat nothing until a servant spills fresh beans from the pod. Then they tear into them raw shells and all green juice running down their chins. The girl weeps while she eats tears, cutting pale tracks through the green on her cheeks. They are carried to the hall of Sir Richard de Calne, a knight whose land borders the pits. He orders them bathed and dressed in plain wool. The dye does not wash off. Their skin stays the colour of moss. Servants hear them crying at night, calling names no tongue can shape. The boy grows weaker every day, coughing green phlegm into the rushes. The girl learns a few English words. She says their country is called St. Martin's Land. She says it lies underground where the sun never rises. Only a dim twilight glows forever. She says they were herding their father's cattle near a river when they heard bells loud as thunder. They followed the sound up a tunnel and came out blinking into noon. The boy dies before Michaelmas. He wastes to bones wrapped in green skin, whispering to his sister until the last breath. They bury him in the churchyard. Grass grows thick and strangely bright over the grave. The girl lives. Her skin fades slowly, first to the colour of weak tea, then to ordinary flesh. She is baptised Agnes and grows into a sharp-tongued woman who marries a man from King's Lynn. If you had stood in the hall the day she first spoke clearly, you would have felt the air turn cold around her words and smelled wet stone, though every door was open to summer. Agnes told the priest one thing more before she stopped speaking of home. In St. Martin's Land, everyone is green, and no one ever hears the sun. Chroniclers write 2 short accounts. William of Newburgh says the children came from a twilight country. Ralph of Coggeshall adds that Agnes lived long and often laughed at how loud our bells ring. Nothing else is certain. The wolf pits are filled in now, the church rebuilt twice. Yet on hot August afternoons, farm boys near Woolpit still swear that if you press your ear to the ground where the deepest pit once lay, you can hear faint bells far below. And sometimes a girl's voice calling a name that sounds almost but not quite like your own. The barley above grows a shade greener in that spot, year after year, no matter the drought. The green of those lost children fades into the pale light of a Japanese palace bedchamber in the year 1010. Silk screens glow soft gold from lanterns outside. A woman sits alone on the tatami, inkstone open brush moving slow across mulberry paper. She is 28, small-boned hair falling loose to the floor. Her name is Murasaki Shikibu, author of the Tale of Genji, and tonight she writes what no one will read until after she is dead. The air smells of plum incense and distant rain. Her sleeves are damp where tears have fallen without sound. She writes about the court. She serves ladies who smile with painted lips while their eyes measure every heartbeat, men who speak of love in the morning and order poison by evening. She writes about spirits too, mono no ke that cling to sleeves and throats when jealousy turns sharp. 3 nights ago, Lady Saisho died in the next pavilion. Everyone said fever. Murasaki saw the truth, the woman wasted to skin over bones, in 7 days hair falling in clumps, eyes fixed on a corner of the room where nothing stood. At the end she clawed her own face until blood ran into her collar. The emperor sent for priests. Too late. The body was carried out before moonset. Murasaki dips her brush again. Ink shines black and wet. She describes how the dead lady's spirit returned the same night, standing at the foot of the emperor's bed in a robe soaked dark. No one else saw. Only the emperor woke, screaming hands at his throat, though nothing touched him. Physicians found bruises shaped like fingers the next morning. She writes of another death last spring, a young consort who hanged herself from a wisteria trellis after reading a letter she was never meant to see. The rope was silk pale purple. Her feet barely cleared the ground. Courtiers found her at dawn, hair sweeping the gravel, face calm as sleep. The letter was gone. Everyone knew whose hand had written it. If you sat beside Murasaki right now, you would hear the soft scratch of brush on paper and feel the room grow colder, though the brazier burned steady. You would smell plum turning sour, the way incense does when something unholy passes through. Her hand never falters. She writes that love in this palace is a ghost that kills by degrees and no exorcism works because everyone feeds it. She finishes at the fourth watch. The lantern gutters low. Outside, a night heron cries once over the pond. Murasaki folds the pages, small ties them with a cord of her own hair, and hides them inside a box of cedar. She blows out the light. In the dark, she whispers a prayer, not for the dead, but for the living who will keep making more of them. The diary stays hidden 200 years. When scholars finally read it, they argue over every line. Some say she exaggerated. Others grow quiet and close the book fast. The palace burned long ago, rebuilt many times yet. On certain autumn nights, when the moon is thin, guards still hear a woman's brush scratching. Somewhere behind the walls, steady and patient, writing down what the living refuse to see. Murasaki herself died at 47, quietly leaving the tale of Genji unfinished in the world's eyes. But the hidden pages end with a single sentence in her small, perfect hand. In the end, the ghosts win, because they never tire of waiting. The ink is still black. The paper still smells faintly of plum. The scratch of Murasaki's brush falls silent, and the wind turns west once more. Cold and damp crossing seas until it reaches the green fields of England in the years after 1066. A boy stands barefoot in a village square, staring up at a Norman soldier on horseback. The soldier leans down, seizes the boy's hair, and shears it short with a dagger. The boy's own long Saxon locks fall into the mud like pale ropes. King William has sent word to every shire Englishmen must cut their hair and shave their upper lips in the Norman style. Long hair is rebellion. Moustaches above the lip are treason. The decree arrives with tax collectors and soldiers who carry shears as often as swords. In London, barbers work under guard. In York, men who refuse are dragged by the beard to the castle yard and clipped by force. In a village near Hastings, an old thane named Wulfstan hides in his hall while soldiers break the door. He is 60, hair to his shoulders, moustache thick as winter fur. They pin him to his own table. The dagger saws close to the scalp. Blood runs where the blade nicks skin. Wulfstan spits in the captain's face and calls him a woman for wearing his hair like one. The captain laughs and orders the moustache shaved with a dull knife. Skin comes away with the hair. Across the country, the same scene repeats. In fields, in churches, in markets, men feel the cold steel against their necks and the sudden lightness on their heads. Women weep to see husbands and sons returned looking like strangers. Boys wake to find their father's proud locks gone, replaced by pink scalps and sullen eyes. The smell of cut hair fills the air that autumn sharp like fresh hay, mixed with fear. Piles of it rot in castle moats. Ravens grow fat. Chroniclers write that the English lost more than land at Hastings. They lost the faces their mothers knew. Refusal means fines, flogging, sometimes blinding. Most obey. Some flee to the fens and grow their hair long again in secret, ambushing Norman patrols with axes and curses. If you walked an English road in 1067, you would see every male head, shorn close, every upper lip bare, and you would feel the silence heavier than any chain. Men touch their scalps when no one watches, fingers searching for what was taken. Children stare at fathers who no longer look like the giants of their dreams. William dies 20 years later, still enforcing the style from beyond the grave, his own hair fashion carved on every new coin. The decree fades slowly. By the 1200s, moustaches creep back longer than before, as if making up for lost time. But in old church carvings, you can still spot the early Norman knights, with their bowl cuts and clean lips staring down at generations who finally grew the hair their grandfathers were not allowed. In certain Sussex villages, they kept one custom alive. On the anniversary of Hastings, men gather after dark light, a bonfire, and throw handfuls of saved hair into the flames. Blonde, brown, grey, whatever their fathers managed to hide. The smoke rises thick and acrid. They drink in silence, and do not cut their hair or beards for a week. The wind carries the smell across the fields, bitter as defeat, sweet as memory. The Domesday surveyors noted it without comment. In some hundreds, men paid the fine rather than obey the haircut law. Their names are written, plain rebels measured in missing inches of hair. 900 years later, on foggy October nights, riders on the old road still swear they see troops of long-haired riders galloping the ridgeways, moustaches streaming like banners, heading nowhere and never quite arriving. The clip of Norman shears still rings in the dark behind them, faint but always following. The wind that once carried the smell of shorn English hair now shifts north cold and salt-heavy until it reaches the rocky shore of Canterbury in the year 1012. Snow falls thin and sharp. Inside the cathedral chapter house, an old man kneels barefoot on stone wrists bound with silver chain. He is Ælfheer, Archbishop of Canterbury, 80 years old, beard white as the snow outside. Thorkel the Tall stands over him. He is 45, a giant even among Vikings, hired by the Danish king to burn England until it pays. His mail is patched with English silver. His breath smells of sour wine. His men crowd the doorway, drunk and restless. They have sacked the city, filled 14 ships with gold and slaves. Now they want the Archbishop's ransom, £3,000 of silver. Ælfheer refuses. He will not let the poor be taxed again for his skin. Thorkel laughs at first, then grows quiet. The men outside begin to shout. They have waited 7 months in camp, growing sick of English rain. Someone throws an ox bone through the doorway. It strikes the Archbishop on the temple. Blood runs warm down his cheek. More bones follow, skulls of cattle ribs. Leg bones picked clean. They bounce off the walls with hollow clacks. One cracks the old man's shoulder. He sags but does not cry out. Thorkel watches, face unreadable. The men are beyond him now. Wine has made them wolves. A horn of ale smashes against the Archbishop's back, soaking his robe dark. If you stood in that chapter house on the night of April 19th, you would hear the wet thud of bone on flesh and the low growl of men who have forgotten why they came. You would smell sour wine, old blood and the smoke of torches guttering in the draught. Ælfheer lifts his head, once eyes clear, and forgives them aloud in a voice steady as prayer. A drunk warrior steps forward with an axe. The first blow takes the Archbishop in the side of the neck. Blood sprays hot across the stone. He falls sideways, still breathing. The second blow finishes it. The body jerks once and lies still. The men stand panting, suddenly quiet. Thorkel turns away first. Outside, the snow keeps falling, covering the cathedral yard in perfect white. They leave the corpse where it fell. By morning, ravens are at the eyes. The monks creep out after the fleet sails and wash the floor with wine and tears. They bury Ælfheer beneath the altar. Within a year, miracles begin. The blind see the lame walk. Kings start calling him Saint Ælfheer. Thorkel himself converts, takes baptism in Denmark, and dies a Christian. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records it in 8 grim words. They pelted him to death with bones and ox heads. Nothing more. Yet every April 19th, the cathedral bells toll slow, and visitors say the chapter house floor stays colder than the rest of the building, even in summer. Footprints sometimes appear overnight, in the dust bare feet, small and old, leading from the altar to the exact spot where the Archbishop knelt. On windy nights, the guards hear a faint clatter far inside the walls, like bones being gathered one by one into a quiet pile. Then silence again, deeper than before. The wind moves on, carrying the smell of old wine and older forgiveness across 1,000 years of changing tides. The clatter of those bones fades into the salt wind that once carried Viking sails home. It blows south now, soft and slow, until it reaches a quiet hill outside Aberdeen, Scotland, on October 23rd, 1057. Dawn is still grey. Mist clings to the heather. A man stands alone on the battlefield of Lumfanen sword, broken mail, torn open like paper. Macbeth is 52 years old. Hair once red, now streaked with blood and frost. His breath steams white. He smells smoke from burning farms and the iron stink of his own wounds. Around him lie the bodies of men who followed him for 17 years. Their eyes stare up at the same pale sky. He backed the wrong son, killed the right king, wore the crown like borrowed armour. Now Malcolm Canmore's army closes the circle. Macbeth leans on the stump of his sword and waits. He thinks of his wife dead by her own hand years ago, and of the 3 weird sisters who promised him safety until Birnam Wood walked, and no man born of woman harmed him. Both promises kept both lies. A young warrior steps from the mist, Macduff eyes burning with older blood. Macbeth lifts the broken blade anyway. Steel meets steel, once, twice. Then Macduff's sword finds the gap under the arm. The point slides in clean twists. Macbeth feels the cold length of it deep in his chest. His knees buckle. The heather is soft beneath him. Macduff pulls the sword free. Blood follows in a warm rush. Macbeth lies on his back, tasting iron and rain. The sky above is the colour of steel. He hears gulls far off heading for the sea. His final thought is simple. The crown weighed more than any head could carry. His final sound is a small exhale that stirs the mist for a moment. Then nothing. They cut his head off there on the hill. Macduff carries it south on a spear, plants it on London Bridge for the crows. The body is left for wolves. Years later, a stone is raised on Lumfalnen, rough and unmarked. Grass grows thick around it. Sheep graze across the old battlefield, without knowing whose blood feeds the roots. The Scottish chronicles write, "Only Macbeth had Mac Findlaich, king of Alba, slain at Lumfalnen, by Malcolm son of Duncan." They do not mention the quiet that fell when the last claimant died, or how the wind suddenly changed direction that morning, blowing north for the first time in weeks. If you climb the hill today, the stone still stands. On certain October dawns, the mist lies thick, and the air smells faintly of iron. Old shepherds say, if you put your ear to the ground, you can hear one slow heartbeat, far below, steady as a drum that refuses to end the song. Then the wind shifts again, gentle now, carrying the names of the dead away across the quiet hills. You are safe here. The battles are long over. The crowns have all turned to rust and stories. The people in these 20 tales are gone, some honoured, some forgotten, but none of them ever truly leave the wind. Tonight the storm outside your window is only weather. Close your eyes, breathe slow. The dark is just the dark, and morning always comes. Sleep well. We'll meet again when the next storm howls at the door.